Okay. The format for this meeting is a 10-minute speaker, our secretary's announcements, followed by a coffee break and snack break, and our main speaker. Let me introduce our first speaker for tonight is Patty from Redondo Beach, right?
I got this with me in case my mind goes blank. I'm just going to start reading it. I always carry it. Can you hear me okay? I guess I'm talking loud enough? Okay. Okay. I'm Patty. I'm an alcoholic, and whoopsie, did I do that? Okay. I'm also a 76-year-old woman, a wife. My husband, Jeff, is right there. 46 years. Yeah, he's not 46 years old. He's 81. But we've been married. We've been married 46 years. I'm a mother. I'm a friend. I'm a physician. And, you know, he's not an alcoholic, but he sure understands what it's like to love one. You know, I think you might be looking at me and think, oh, well, we've got an old timer. We've got decades of sobriety here. We're going to hear about it. Oh, well, hope she fits it into 10 minutes. Well, not so much. I'm 2 years and 5 months sober. Now, there's a twist to that. Before I relapsed, just about 3 years ago this month, I had 27 years. And I had 27 good years. During that time, I got sober at 45. I'd been living in blackout hell. And the Mass Medical Society, I was in Massachusetts, they helped me get into a program for addicted physicians. But I saw AA was the answer right then. The textbooks weren't going to help me. And so I got into AA, and I was a pretty good AA for about 17 years, I'd say. And then around age 60, I don't know, I went on cruise control. I started thinking, I'm okay, I've been sober this long, and I didn't even really think that. I just slipped away. I stopped going to meetings, not all of a sudden, I just drifted. I stopped being involved. But what happened was I stayed fine. I stayed fine for a decade. For those of you who are newcomers, and I usually try to remember names, but not so much anymore. But I'm glad you're here. You know, I have a disease called alcoholism, and it's incurable, it's progressive, and it's fatal. And as you old-timers, I know that alcohol is cunning, baffling, and powerful. But for me, I also saw that it's patient. My current sponsor now has told me, well, alcoholism is like a tiger growing inside of you. It grows and grows, waiting to pounce. Well, it pounced on me really suddenly. What happened was 3 years ago, I was living the good life. I was in a golf community with Jeff, playing 3 times a week, a lot of friends. I was happy. I have a son, and everything was going well. I came home from golf one day, and there was some wine in the fridge left over from Thanksgiving. My son had been there doing some cooking, and I'd gotten a little complacent, you know, about, oh, it's okay in the house. Oh, maybe I can cook with it a little bit, but I didn't really feel like drinking. I sat down, and I was about to read my book, and I just had the thought, oh, a glass of wine would taste good. I tell you, it came out of the blue. It was just a thought. But the wine was there, and I thought, I think a little bit will be okay. It was a nice Sauvignon Blanc. I poured it, and I didn't get a wine glass. I poured it into a cup. I think I already somehow knew maybe this wasn't going to be good, but I didn't know. And I sipped it. And it did tasted good. I got a little high. And so I said, well, I'll have some more. Well, he was going to be gone about 2 hours. I drank the half bottle. And what did I do next? I bet you can guess. I hid it. And this is something I knew how to do very well because during my 30 years, ages 15 to 45 when I got sober, toward the end, I had a lot of hiding places. So I hid it. The next morning, I thought, I'd like to have some more wine this afternoon. Went down to the grocery store, got the bottle. Didn't say a word to Jeff. I'll go fast forward because it wasn't so fast. Within about 5 weeks, I had too many bottles to hide. And I was going to different, we had different trash areas, and I would put some in this and some in this, and it wasn't working. So what was the answer? Vodka, right? Vodka. So I began buying that. So that was 5 weeks in, and then it started going into my blue Callaway Gardens water bottle under the sink. So the vodka went in. I had a Robitussin shot glass, and he didn't notice. The women go into the bathroom all the time to fix their hair, to do this or that. And I just was drinking vodka throughout the day. And still, again, keeping it secret. By after Christmas, I was starting to have the shakes in the morning, and the drinking got to be through the night. Somehow, I kept going, and I kept up my life. Looking back, Jeff told me after he found this out, he said, Patty, you did get quiet, and you seemed, a little preoccupied, but I have a lot of arthritis, a lot of pains. Then the perfect storm hit. In June of that year, this would be 7 months into my relapse, about 2.5 years ago, I got uterine cancer, had to have surgery. We went to the hospital. I couldn't sign the consent forms. I was shaking so bad. I asked him to do it. Honey, I've got low blood sugar. It's pathetic, but it's how we do it. I had my surgery. I got a clean bill of health. But you know what they gave me when they sent me home? Bottle of OxyContin. And I had dabbled somewhat in pain pills, never been on them much, but I have a bad arthritis, and a little Vicodin here and there. I was always an alcoholic, though, always alcohol. But the Oxy, in the midst of my being physically and addicted to my alcohol now, it was like candy. And I started taking it and taking it. Within about 10 days from my surgery, I ran out of vodka one morning, and I knew I was too out of it to drive down. I had my CVS run. I used to say, honey, I got to go get feminine products at the CVS, so he wouldn't ask me why. But I knew I couldn't drive. And I walked out, and he and my son and his fiance were there, and I just collapsed. And I said, I've had it. I can't do it anymore. And they looked at my son. I remember him saying, Mom, what's wrong? And I just blurted out the whole story. But what I said first was, I need help. I need help. I'm in big trouble. And what unfolded after that was pretty remarkable. I stopped breathing in the emergency room and almost died. I was in the ICU for 6 days. They got me to rehab, and boy, there was a dark room in rehab. I stayed there 6 weeks. I couldn't walk. I couldn't think. Those things were on the wall. It was dark, and I saw God. God comes up, I think, in 4 spots there. I've always been a religious person. I've always had God in my life. And I'm kind of a tough nut. My dad taught me to be a brave soldier. He fought in World War II, and he said, Patty, you always got to be brave. I saw those words. The room was dark, but they were light. And I said, you've got to fight. You've got to go back to AA. You've got to find your way out of this. And I did. I've been 2 years and 5 months, my husband has been with me every step of the way. He drove me to 90 meetings in 90 days in the dark of Georgia. That's where we were living, in Georgia. He would help me. We'd go, and he'd say, Patty, here we go. And 90 days, we got lost. We couldn't find places. He never let up. He's stubborn, too. And I'm back. I'm here tonight. There's a lot more I could tell you about how I got sober this time. But it's AA, and it's finding not just the God that I went to church for, but the higher power we find, the spiritual awakening that is the result of these 12 steps. Whenever I read that, I always say the result of the 12 steps. I had that over those 2 years, and it's keeping me fit now. I don't feel afraid of alcohol. I don't feel afraid at all. But I know that if something bad were to happen, AA is always here for us. You know, you walk in these rooms, and really, everybody looks and says, "Where have you been? You've been out for a decade? Come back. You've been out for a night? Come back. Come here." That's where you'll find your new life. Thank you.
My name is Robert. I'm an alcoholic. Will you please join me in the serenity prayer? God, grant me the serenity to accept the things that I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. Now, our main speaker will share his experience, strength, and hope with us. Please join me in welcoming Karl from West Covina.
Thank you. Good evening. My name's Karl. I'm an alcoholic. And it does say West Covina here. That's a big difference between Covina and West Covina. I know you guys down here in Manhattan Beach don't know the difference, and I'm not going to take all the time, but just know, huge difference between Covina. Well, just this. Covina is a real city. West Covina is just a housing development. That's what it is. And it was started out of a resentment, too. They stole a coffee pot and went and started their own damn city, just like an AA meeting. So anyway, did I tell you my name's Karl? I'm an alcoholic? Did I tell you that? I just got reminded big time that I'm an alcoholic. Thank you, Patty. That was a spectacular 10-minute talk. I really, I'm glad I did not miss that. You also spelled Karl with a C. That's a different person. I'm Karl with a K. It's a completely different name, just like West Covina is completely different than Covina. Oh, anyway, I imagine that you think your speaker is supposed to be spiritually fit at all times. Not true. I'm a little sideways these days for a little while, and, you know, I'm feeling life's not always fair, but a good saying I just learned, it's really true. If life was fair, ducks would have shotguns. Life is just not fair. I want to thank Julia for coming with me all the way from Covina on that ride. The most important thing I can tell you about myself is that I'm an alcoholic, and the reason I believe I'm an alcoholic is really very, very simple. The reason that I believe I'm an alcoholic is because I've got a really bizarre relationship with alcohol. That's why I'm an alcoholic, no other reason. And this strange relationship that I have with alcohol takes on a few forms. The first part of this strange relationship that I have with alcohol happens when I drink it. A very strange thing happens when I drink booze, and our book calls it an allergic reaction. And the book says the symptom of this allergic reaction that I get when I drink alcohol is what they refer to as something called the phenomenon of craving. And the best way that I can describe this thing that the book calls the phenomenon of craving in my life is that it seems like whenever I drink booze, the more booze I drink, the thirstier I get. It's really strange. It happens with nothing else that I drink. They were kind enough to give me this... To prove that, they were kind enough to give me this bottle of water. Right? Nice little holster for it. It's very, very ingenious. And over the next 45 minutes to 8 hours that I'm talking with you, I will. I just saw somebody look at it. He didn't really mean that, did he? 8 hours, Jesus. Now, over the next 45 minutes that I'm talking with you, I'll probably drink about half this bottle, and I'll probably take it with me to drink on the way home. But I can absolutely swear to you that once I finish this bottle of water, I'm not going to go buy a case of water and lock myself in a hotel room in El Monte, right? There's no chance that I'll be texting Keith, dude, man, I need another case, right? I'll turn the pink slip in my car over, right? It's not going to happen. But if that was the only thing that made me alcoholic, this bizarre, unquenchable thirst that happens once I start to drink, if that was the sum total of my relationship with alcohol, well then, Just Say No would have wiped out alcoholism, right? Early 80s, Nancy Reagan came out and said, just say no. If that would have worked, I would have, and I imagine you would have gone, oh, ha, no, right? And we would have just gone on and lived a happy, successful life just saying no. But I've got this other really strange component of my relationship with alcohol. And what's really strange about this part of my relationship with alcohol is that this happens when I'm not drinking. I really want to emphasize this for people that are new. This deadly component of my abnormal relationship with alcohol happens when I'm not drinking. Our book calls it the mental obsession. They also refer to it as the strange mental blank spot. Patty described it to a T. They even drive it further home for me when the book calls it the thought process that precedes the first drink. The best way that I can describe this thing that the book calls the mental obsession in my life is that it seems like no matter how much pain and suffering my last drunk caused, I seem to have a mind that will always paint a picture to make it okay for me to take another drink. I seem to have a mind that will rationalize and justify my walk back to the next drink at all costs. So therefore, because of these two components of my relationship with alcohol, number one, I cannot drink successfully because of this craving, this loss of control. But at the very same time, because this thing called the mental obsession, I cannot not drink successfully. I'm damned if I do, and I'm damned if I don't. It's the ultimate catch-22 we call alcoholism. Not an alcohol problem, because an alcohol problem would be solved by stop it. Right? Alcoholism has multiple sides to it. So I'm going to harp on that physical feature a little bit more because it's the one thing, bar none, we all have in common. Because there's a lot of things we don't have in common, right? Our stories are very different because AA is a huge, wide cross-section of society. Every single race, creed, color, religion, every single social and economic background, every single culture, we're all here in Alcoholics Anonymous. AA is such a wide cross-section of society that right here tonight, there is probably a bank president, a bank teller, and a bank robber, all right here in the room. And they're all telling a very different story about what just happened, too. So our stories are often very different based upon what kind of family we came from, what culture we came from, what age, all of that stuff. But on top of that, we drink differently than each other. We really do. If you listen closely, when people tell their stories in meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous, I think you'll agree, we drink differently than each other. To illustrate that, let's imagine this. If you're new, this would never happen in an AA meeting. But let's say we just right in through that door, right here, we wheel in a giant cart. And on that cart, we got all the kinds of booze we all love, right? If you're some sort of expensive top shelf drinker, we got it. Remy Martin, Cavassier, okay, we got it. But if you're a bottom shelf drinker, we got that too. Mad Dog 2020 and everything in between. And if all of us took a good 4 or 5 stiff drinks, real drinks, no umbrellas in there, no mixer, a good 4 or 5 stiff drinks, we'd all be acting very differently. Right over in this corner, we'd have the good time crowd, right? You know them. Ha ha, woohoo, drink, 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 talk, 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 party, 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 drink, 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 talk, talk, talk. If we add a little methamphetamine, talk a little faster, talk, 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 right? Right? But we're having it's the good time corner over there. right? Over in that corner, we'd have the criers. You know them, they get drunk and like, oh! Over in that corner, we'd have the fighters, you know, they get drunk, got to fight, fight. Over in this corner, a bunch of us would be naked. I personally would be visiting the other three corners trying to find a couple of friends to come over here with me. Just the way I get. So our stories are very different based upon which corner we're drinking in. You're in that good time corner, get arrested a lot. Why? Because it's the next bar. Got to be at the next bar. It's happening in the next bar. After hours. Whose house? We're going to Alan's house after hours. Come on, let's go. Right? So we're out on the road. We get arrested. Right? So that's our... Over in the crying corner, they never get arrested. They don't even leave the damn house. Worst thing they do, they call you at 3 a.m., blah, 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 blah. So our stories are very different based upon what corner we're drinking in. But no matter which corner we're in, there's one thing we would all be doing. We'd all be back at that cart for another drink. It was really important when I was new for me to understand that when they told me, son, listen for the similarities rather than the differences. It saved my life, right? Not to listen to, well, you know, where'd you grow up? What kind of family did you come from? Because I heard so many different stories. And if I would try to gauge whether I was alcoholic or not, based upon that, I may not have stayed. So I set this relationship up with alcohol that I just described to you right from the get-go. When I first started drinking, I started drinking very late compared to most people in AA. I was 11. I hung in there for a while. I was born in Helena, Montana. At 4 years old, my father packed us all up, moved us to Southeast Asia. I grew up in the island of Borneo in a shipping town called Kota Kinabalu. Came back to the United States when I was 10 and moved to Seattle. And I took a drink at 11. Wasn't trying to escape from anything. I wasn't, you know, I didn't come from an alcoholic home. I just took a drink because my new friend Dave up the street said, we should drink. And I said, we should. Right? And bam, just like that, alcohol took over my life. Everything that I cared about, school, music, sports, my family, everything became secondary to the hunt for alcohol. And by the time I'm 14 there in Seattle, I'm a neighborhood drunk. I was a neighborhood pot dealer. I forgot to mention my father was a neighborhood Lutheran minister. I know, he was thrilled. And... you know, my parents tried. They tried so hard to try to fix things. Sent me to private schools, tried to restrict me from being with these friends. And, you know, when I was about 17, they decided that if we could get them out of Seattle, things would get better. They sent me across state to Washington State University, 300 miles away. I spent 3 years at Washington State University on my parents' money. And in that 3 years, I got maybe 10 credits. At any given time, my grade point average matched my blood alcohol content, about a 0.25. I did nothing at that school. By the time I was 22, this little story I'm about to tell you will let you know exactly where I stood with my family. Now, my father was Swedish. My mother was Icelandic. That's why I look the way I do. And I don't know whether this custom I'm about to tell you about is a Scandinavian custom or whether it's a Lutheran custom, I don't know. But at Christmas time, my parents wouldn't just send out Christmas cards to their friends and relatives. My parents would send out this big, long Christmas letter that said everything the family had been doing that year. And when I was about 22, I got a hold of one of these letters that had been sent out the previous Christmas. And as I read it, it let me know exactly where I stood with my family. Now, the first paragraph talked about what my parents had been doing that year. Another impressive year, I'm sure. They were impressive people, impressive lives. There's a whole department named after my mother at the University of Washington. There are buildings, hospitals, and churches standing around the world as a result of my father has done. So I'm sure it was a very impressive paragraph. The next paragraph talked about what the Morris children had been doing that year. And that paragraph went something like this. Our oldest daughter, Christina, just graduated from Cornell University in Ithaca, New York, with a master's degree in human resources. She's now working for a large pharmaceutical company in the Midwest. She traveled to Europe this summer. She saw this, she saw that. Her hobbies are this, and this. She's a very happy young woman. She has a very full life. We're very proud of her. Our oldest son, Eric, just graduated from Western Washington State University with a degree in marketing. He's now working for a large advertising firm here in downtown Seattle. He loves to golf. He loves to travel. He's engaged to be married to this wonderful woman named Mary Lou, who works for a very small company here in Seattle named Microsoft. God, it was small at one time. And they love to golf together. They love to travel together. He's a very happy young man. We are very proud of him. Our youngest son, Karl, just turned 22. I was kind of like, really? Long story short, this next 18 months, I'm going to condense 18 months into one sentence, because it really would take till breakfast to describe it all, but really bad night happened, so I joined the Navy. It was a bad night. It was a bad night. On my way into the Navy, this should concern you if you care anything about the security of the United States, but on my way into the Navy, I passed a potential test. It's called the ASVAB test. And this test that I took qualified me to become a nuclear engineer. That should concern you that the United States Navy would even have any type of system in place that even maybe, possibly, or even remotely would allow somebody like me near anything nuclear. However, they made me take another test when I showed up at that base for boot camp, and I could not pass that particular test. That test is called a urinalysis test, is what it's called. I never knew how to study for those things. Should have been kicked out. Series of events allowed me to stay in the Navy. They took away the 2-year nuclear school. They sent me directly out to the fleet. Now I'm out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, Destroyer Squadron 17. I'm on a destroyer. And when the ship is out at sea, I did well. I started to understand what it meant to serve my country. I started to understand the camaraderie of being in the military. I started to learn a trade that could have held me till today had I wanted to. So I did well while the ship was out at sea, but that ship would always pull into a port sooner or later. And I would leave that ship and I would take a drink. And at this point in my life, I'm 23, I'm 24, I'm 25 years old. And at this point in my life, when I take a drink, I would trigger off a minimum of 2 days, sometimes 3 days, every once in a while, a 4-day drunk. And I got to tell you, when I'm on a 4-day drunk, but the ship is only in port for 2 days, we've got a little math problem. The Navy gets quite angry at this. It's a very strange feeling coming out of one of these 3 or 4 day drunks, finding myself on a large pier at 6 a.m. in the morning in a foreign country going, you know, there was a destroyer here the other day. I've been in the Navy approximately 2 years at this point. I came to in a cheap hotel room in downtown San Diego, and I realized it's Monday. You know the nightmare we come to and you start trying to figure out, oh, God, it's Monday. No, I started drinking on Thursday. Not again, not again. I got in my car and tried to race back to the base. And you know the old story. My car is dying of alcoholism right along with me. And I'm trying to get the car back, go as fast as I can. And one of the tools to living I have at this point in my life, I would always save a pint underneath my seat so I could down that before I got back to the ship, because I always knew it's going to be a while till I get a drink when I get to the ship. And I'm paying more attention to getting that pint in me than where the car is going. And I lost control of the car about 40 feet away from the guard shack where a Marine stands duty, and I hit the cement median, and the car flipped over and bang, right through that guard shack. As I stand before you today, I am so very grateful that United States Marines are in tip-top physical shape. This young man did a quick somersault out of that guard shack. He was back up, weapon drawn. God, I hated mornings like this. I really hated mornings like this. Sirens going off, everybody screaming and yelling, everybody running in different directions. They're all pointing at me like this is my fault. And I was climbing out of the wrecked car feeling like I had questions too. What happened? I really hated mornings like this. Stage 2 of mornings that I hated. About an hour and a half later, I find myself in a hospital, and I'm handcuffed to the hospital bed. I really hated mornings like that. Of course, my Navy superiors are reading new charges on me. This is nothing significant in my life. Just what happens in a guy's life like mine about every 90 days if you're living the way I'm living. But the most significant thing that happened that morning is the Navy doctors prescribed this stuff called antabuse. I was now under orders to show up at sick bay every single morning. I'd have to sit in a chair, much like you guys are sitting right there. They would make me put my hands right to my side, and I'd have to stick my tongue out. And the hospital corpsman would put this little white pill on my tongue and make me sit there for half an hour to make sure it actually got in my system. Over the next 7 to 10 days, I started to experience the most cunning, baffling, and powerful side of this thing we call alcoholism, and that is I had no alcohol in my system, but I'm slowly going insane. See, throughout my life, people who loved me, cared about me, or who had authority over me would take alcohol away from me. Many times in my life, people would take alcohol away from me. And then I would always be put in front of some sort of highly educated, well-meaning person, some sort of therapist, psychiatrist, psychologist, a pastor. Right now, at this point in my Navy career, I have a weekly appointment with a Navy psychiatrist and a weekly appointment with a Navy chaplain. And these people, very well-meaning, only wanted to help me. They would always have some sort of report in front of them. It'd be a one-on-one appointment kind of thing. They would have some sort of a report in front of them. As they'd read it, their face would say, "Why do you do this? Don't you see what you're doing? What do you..." If I would have had the vocabulary that you guys have given me in the 38 years that I've been here with you, I got here at 25. All these wrinkles in my face are from you guys. If I would have had the vocabulary that you guys have given me, I would have said to these well-meaning, highly educated people who only wanted to help me, as they're staring at this report and looking at me, saying, "What's the matter with you, son?" Oh my goodness. The craziest newcomer in my home group calling right now. I have half a mind to put him on speaker for all you guys to hear him. He's really, he just tossed his life into a trash can the other day. I can just imagine what anyway, we'll let Robbie be. I so want to do that one of these days. Just, "Yes, Robbie, how can I help you?" And you guys can all listen. Anyway, where was I now? Oh, the well-meaning, highly educated people. If I would have had the vocabulary, I would have responded to these people that are looking at that report and looking at me. I would have said, "I see that you're shocked by my drinking. I am too sometimes." But then I would have told them, "But if you knew how I felt when I wasn't drinking, you wouldn't be asking me why I drink. There's only one thing worse than the price I'm paying for my drinking, and that's the way that I feel when I'm not drinking. And I don't know how to describe the restlessness, the irritability, the discontentment. I don't know how to describe the giant hole in my soul that I don't even know why it's there. And I don't know how to tell you that the only thing that fixes that is somewhere between the second and third drink. I don't know how to tell you that. I don't even know how to tell myself that." Lasted about 10 days on that antabuse. I went AWOL from my ship. I locked myself back in that little hotel room in downtown San Diego. And I remember sitting on the edge of the bed, and there was a bottle of vodka and a shot glass sitting there. And as I stared at the bottle of vodka, I remembered that the Navy doctors had given me a very stern warning about drinking on top of antabuse when they prescribed it for me. They had told me, "Son, you need to understand that if you drink on top of this antabuse, you will get one of two reactions. One reaction is you will get violently ill. The other reaction, son, is you need to hear this. You might die. You could have full organ shutdown. Do you understand, son?" I remember their voices going as I stared at the bottle. And I thought, well, I wonder which reaction I'm going to get. And I took one shot. And nothing happened. Authority had lied to me again as far as I was concerned. I waited about 2 minutes just to make sure. And I took another shot. All of a sudden, I felt tingly in the face, so I looked in this cracked little mirror that was in this hotel room, and I was bright red, blotchy and purple in places. Took another shot. All of a sudden, I could feel my heart going boom, boom, boom. Looked at my shirt. I was drenched in sweat, and all of a sudden, like, hyperventilating. We're doing all right so far. There's something the matter with you guys if you think this is funny. I got to tell you. There's guys in the back going, "Yeah, right on, go." I took another shot, and up it came. My second sponsor was a man named Eddie Cochran. His sobriety date was December 2nd, 1951, one of the pioneers of Southern California Alcoholics Anonymous. I used to drive him down to this meeting back in the early 90s. Because he couldn't drive at night, and so I assigned myself as his chauffeur. I used to be in this meeting. The podium used to be right over there, and it went the whole length. It was, anyway. He used to call the next thing that happened to me projectile regurgitation. This is the new level of puking I'm unfamiliar with. This is like, kind of like Linda Blair in The Exorcist, right across the room. Thank God the Plaza Hotel, this hotel I'm in, thank God the toilet is in the same room with the bed. It's a design feature, I believe, maybe to make convicts feel more at home upon release. But I found the magic of drinking on top of Antabuse, and that is if you hang in there. And you got to hang in there. If you're going to drink on Antabuse, you cannot half measure it. In fact, if you're going to drink on top of Antabuse, you might need to reach down deep inside yourself for a level of commitment you might not even know you have. But I found that if I kept drinking and kept puking and kept drinking and kept puking for about an hour to an hour and a half, enough of the Antabuse would kick out of my system and I'd quit throwing up and I would just be left with red face, hyperventilating and sweating, and I'm all right with that. So I drank on top of Antabuse for the last 7 months of my drinking. The only word to describe this are desperation drinking. I was in and out of the hospital. My last night of drinking, I'm being let out of the San Diego jail. I'm being transferred from civilian authorities back to the military authorities. The handcuffs are extra tight that morning. My neck muscles are not working well. And they tried to bring me back to my ship, and that morning the officer deck put his arm up and said, wrong answer. Orders have already been processed on this loser last night. The orders are 90 days in the brig, bad conduct discharge, or, then he got this sort of sour look on his face. He said, or it says here he can be transferred up to treatment. I remember they said treatment. I went, Now, I didn't really even know what treatment was. I'd heard of it. You can't be out there and not hear of it. But this is the way that I would have heard about treatment. I could be in a bar or a crack house, and somebody say, hey man, anybody seen Joe? And somebody goes, oh, Joe got arrested. He went to treatment. We would all go, ugh. Nobody said, hey, nobody had follow-up questions. Nobody thought, let's get a hold of Joe, see how he's doing. Maybe he's got a solution for us. We're dying here. None of that. It's just like, ugh. But the reason that treatment piqued my interest that morning is because I was 25 years old. I'm dying of alcoholism. And I didn't want to not drink. I wanted you to leave me alone. I didn't want to be in handcuffs. I didn't want to get kicked out of the Navy, but I certainly didn't want to not drink. That was beyond my comprehension. But that treatment thing sounded like it might help me with the inevitable court date that was coming up, because I was in handcuffs. I knew that whenever I was in handcuffs, in short order, I will be in front of a judge. And I thought that treatment thing might help with that. That's really all it was, so I didn't argue. And I now know it wouldn't have mattered what I was thinking or feeling that morning, because I was in handcuffs. When you're in handcuffs, nobody would come up to me. So what's your opinion on what we're going to do next, right? When you're in handcuffs, you go where they say. They took me up to a military treatment center. When the doors were locked behind me, that's when the handcuffs were taken off me. So now I'm in this military treatment center, and the most profound thing that happened there was this. 4 to 5 nights a week, white vans would pull up to those barracks. 6 or 7 of us would be put into each one of those vans. Those vans would leave the base and go out into town and take us to meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous. If this would have been the late 80s, early 90s, San Diego AA was very used to this. A white van would pull up, and 4, 5 or 6, maybe 7 of us would be sitting along the back, and you guys would allow us to watch Alcoholics Anonymous. I didn't know there was a huge difference between watching Alcoholics Anonymous and actually doing Alcoholics Anonymous. But I'm so very grateful that Alcoholics Anonymous allows and encourages outside agencies to refer potential alcoholics to open meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous. It saved my life. A couple of things that happened that changed I didn't know. I didn't go, oh, my life is changing here. But only in hindsight, I can tell you. I noticed a couple of things. As I sat during that 45 days and 4 to 5 nights a week, I would watch you guys. First thing. Remember I had told you that alcohol had been taken away from me a number of times before in my life, and I was always put into these one-on-one conversations with highly educated, well-meaning people who always wanted to talk to me about me. What's going on with you, son? What happened to you? Why are you behaving this way? They always wanted to talk to me about me. But now alcohol has been taken away from me, and instead of being put in front of them, I'm put with you guys. And you guys seem to have no interest in talking with me about me. You guys seem to only want to talk about yourselves. You guys would just go on and on and on about yourselves, like I'm doing tonight, right? When Keith sent me a text, want to come down to Martyrs and talk about yourself for an hour? It's like, yes, I do. If you're new or fairly new or not so new and you get really, really nervous, I still get nervous doing this. I really do. But if you're nervous to the point where you're like, don't even want to go do it, this is what I suggest you do. Go practice telling your story in the mental institution. They won't judge you like the people in AA. You guys are all judging me. You're going to talk about me at coffee afterwards. You're going to agree with this, right? Go practice telling your story in the mental institution. They won't judge you. On top of that, as you're practicing your story in the mental institution, if one of the guys on the couch in there goes, that part was great, save that part of your story. Because if they like it in the mental institution, we're going to love it here in Alcoholics Anonymous. It's called hospitals and institutions work. It's one of the most important things you can do in early sobriety or not so early sobriety. The other thing that I noticed, I believed you were sober and I believed in your stories that you drank the way I did. But what baffled me is you seemed happy about being sober. You seemed to celebrate this thing called sobriety. You seemed to have this sobriety date that would roll off your tongue like your child's birthday. You seemed to guard that sobriety date. I'd never seen that. You guys celebrated, you were happy about being, I knew what sober was. Sober was this, hey Karl, why aren't you drinking? I can't! They're on me. I can't! That's what sobriety was. But you guys wore it loosely. You were comfortable with it. That really made an impact on me. So after 45 days, I was let out of that military treatment center, just what the orders were. I remember leaving on a Friday afternoon. My car was brought out of this impound lot. I like to joke I got sober with driving a Rolls Canardly. That's the kind of car that rolls down one hill in Canardly, make it up the next. 68 Volkswagen, hole in the floorboard, got to push start the thing. And I'm leaving the base where the treatment center was. My car was in an impound lot, and I had orders in my hands. It was Friday afternoon. And, in chapter 5 was read, we stood at the turning point. I have stood at the turning point in my 38 years of sobriety under many, many different conditions. What I mean by stood at the turning point, it means in hindsight, we look at our lives and we go, you know what, if I would have turned right, my life would have gone that way, but I turned left, so my life went that way. And I can tell you 8 to 12 really important times in my sobriety where that has happened. My very first one sober was leaving that base because I had orders in my hand. It was a Friday afternoon, and my orders said I did not need to be back to my ship till Monday. What kind of Navy clerk would do that? Let's send him to treatment at taxpayers' expense and then give him the weekend off, right? But leaving that base, it was at the Miramar Naval Air Station, was where the treatment center was. That's where the Top Gun pilot school was. Our little section was called Top Drunk, is what they called us. And if you know where it's at, I could have left that base, taken a right, dropped right, get on the 163 freeway, boom, right back downtown San Diego. I could be right back at the Plaza Hotel, right where I left off. But there was another voice that, right at that moment said, but Karl, there was that meeting hall that they took you to a couple of times. You remember where it's at because it's near a bar you used to like to drink in at Pacific Beach. And when you were there listening to them, some people that shared talked about that they'd been at the same address for an earlier meeting, or that they were going to another meeting at the same address the next day. I didn't know they were describing an Alano Club, an AA meeting hall. I didn't really understand what that was. But I thought, if I just go there, maybe I'll be safe. And I took a left. And I showed up at the 6 o'clock gong show meeting in Pacific Beach. The truth about my life at that point was I had 45 days without a drink. I had a lot of information. I was physically feeling better since I've been a young teenager. But there had been no spiritual awakening, spiritual experience, or even a personality change sufficient to bring about recovery from alcoholism. And what was even more dangerous than that not having happened, I didn't know I needed one. I'm sitting in the back of that meeting, 45 days, information, feeling better. One guy that night, operating on his primary purpose, saw me there, realized he didn't recognize me, came right across the room before the meeting started and rather aggressively said, "Hey! Never seen you before. What are you doing?" And he startled me, and I accidentally told him the truth. I go, I don't know. I just got out of the Navy Treatment Center about an hour ago. I don't know what I'm doing. This guy's eyes went bing, big smile went across his face. He looked like he had just hit a jackpot in Las Vegas. I didn't know that I just established myself as the holy grail of Alcoholics Anonymous. A new guy who accidentally admits he didn't know what he was doing, right? So at the break, he was fighting his friends. He's mine, get away. I got him. There was something else going on in that guy's life that particular Friday night that made him especially glad to meet me. This guy's girlfriend had left him the night before for one of his friends in his home group. I know. So he was wondering what he was going to do with his weekend. Homicide, suicide, get drunk, or grab this newcomer. He's like all over me all weekend. We went to like 18 meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous. In between each meeting, he'd throw me the passenger side of his car. He'd start driving and he'd start yelling. He wouldn't even look at the road. He had like one of these AA radar cards that just made it to the next meeting. And he'd be yelling at me, you got to go to meetings, got to read the book, you got to get a sponsor. Damn her! Got to go to meetings, got to read the book. Damn her! I'm like, Jesus. Now, I didn't know it, but I was getting a very early introduction to your typical AA relationship breakup is what I was getting. But I'm so very glad that that guy, that night in his pain, was a guy in AA who had done the work of Alcoholics Anonymous, who had taken the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, and therefore he understood that the solution to his pain was out of self, out of self, out of self. I'm so very glad that that weekend that man was not at home underneath his covers whining into his sponsor's answer machine. If you're like 30 years old or younger, an answer machine is this box that used to sat on the kitchen counter. So glad. Sponsor, where are you? Fix me! He was dragging my sorry butt around. I guarantee you he went to meetings where his sponsor was and talked to him there. After that weekend, I got back to my ship, and the one other sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous on my ship was waiting for me. His name was Bob W. He was 23 years old. He had 14 months of sobriety. He was very proud of his name, Bob W. He said, I'm like the hybrid of the founders of Alcoholics Anonymous. If there was such a thing as a rolling eye emoji back then, I would have rolled it. I was like, Jesus. My first 2 years of sobriety, I spent on my ship traveling the world with Bob. And whenever the ship would pull into port, Bob and I would go find you guys. No matter what country we were in, we would leave that ship, we'd find a payphone. We would put in whatever currency there was, whatever calling card, we'd have a number for that country or that city. We would dial it, maybe a live person would answer, maybe it would just be a recording with an address. We would get the address, we would open up a map, an actual map, and we would find the AA meeting. We always found you, no matter where we were in the world. Maybe there was only 2 of you, maybe there was 200 of you, but we always found you. And when the ship would be out at sea, we'd be out at sea for 2 and 3 weeks at a time. Bob had a sponsor back in port that told him, when the ship's out at sea, you guys need to read the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous to each other. And that's what we did. Every single night at 6:30 when the ship would be out at sea, Bob and I would go down in engine room number 2, way down at the bottom. There was this battery shop, and we would go down there every night at 6:30. We would read the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous back and forth to each other. In my mind's eye, when I picture those 2 young men out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, down at the bottom of the USS Cushing, down in that little battery shop at the bottom of the ship, 2 young men in a big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. I view it as Alcoholics Anonymous in its purest form, the blind leading the blind. Bob didn't know what he was doing. I was the first one he'd ever really worked with. I didn't know what I was doing, but we both had a desire to stay sober. We had a big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. We had the fellowship when we could access it. And what's supposed to happen under the conditions, when you strongly want sobriety and you use whatever is available to you, we promise you it'll happen. It'll happen. Both he and I had a fundamental rearrangement of our attitudes and ideas towards life. The book calls it a spiritual awakening. It happened over a period of time, over little incidences that happen. Here's one of them. Now, most meetings, you guys acknowledge the birthdays, but a lot of meetings, you bring up a cake, and especially when you get 1 year, you got all your friends show up and your family shows up, and we sing very badly, happy birthday, right? My 1 year happened in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. It was January 21st, 1988. I had 1 year of sobriety, and the ship was out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. So Bob went up to the mess deck, stole a stale piece of cornbread. There were no candles on the ship, so he flicked a wood match, put it in the cornbread, and he held it out, and he sang very badly, "Happy birthday to you." It was so lame, just so lame. And then I blew out the match, And then Bob said, "Would you like to share?" It was just as lame as could be. But I got to tell you, later that night, as I laid in my rack in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, something hit me. There was a lot of things that were still very, very wrong in my life. I still had civilian charges that I was trying to fix. I still had charges in the military that I was trying to fix. I had just recently turned in paperwork on this embezzlement scam I forgot to tell you about. And I didn't know how that was going to turn out. My family would barely talk to me. They didn't know whether I was telling the truth or lying. We didn't have cell phones where it was easy to communicate back then. I would make phone, when I could, I would call, but I'd done that before and lied for a month, So it was walking on eggshell, really, But I knew one thing. I have 1 year of sobriety. That's the only concrete thing that I had in my life was I have 1 year. And on that day, I realized why your sobriety date rolls off your tongue like your child's birthday. I realized why you guarded your sobriety date. And a little window into what was available for me in Alcoholics Anonymous opened up for me. 2 years sober, I got an honorable discharge out of the Navy. That's the result of the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, an apparently merciful God, and a Navy clerk that lost half my file. That's how that happened. But I got an honorable discharge after 2 years. And one of the amends I was unable to make with my family while I was still in the Navy was that my parents had paid for that bachelor's degree. 3 years at Washington State University, 2 semesters at University of Washington, 1 semester at Seattle U. I got nothing to show for it. And Bob didn't quite know what to do, but the grand sponsor got involved again. It's never good news when the grand sponsor gets involved in these decisions. He had a very clever thing. He said, "Oh, easy, son. You can either pay your parents back every single nickel they wasted on your education, or you could go get what they paid for in the first place." So I instantly looked into VA benefits, and I found a university in this little town called Covina. Never heard of Covina before. And I remember packing up. I still had the same car that I got sober in, 68 Volkswagen, hole in the floorboard, had to push start the thing, even after 2 years sobriety and getting a Navy paycheck. Why is that? Oh, because I turned myself in on that embezzlement scam. They docked 80% of my paycheck for the whole rest of the time I was in the Navy. And so I'm puttering on up the LA freeways, and I started to think, I'm going to have to go to school, I'm going to have to work, I'm going to be busy, I need a life. I'll stop by meetings when I get a chance, but I need to get a life. I've heard people in AA talk about having lives, and I need to get one. And that's when I pulled into the 502 Club, the San Gabriel Valley Alano Club in Covina, just to find out where the meetings are in case I needed one while I was getting a life. And that's when I met Eddie Cochran. Bob had to stay in the Navy 2 years. The ship was going to Asia for like 3 months. And I needed another sponsor, but that wasn't my thinking. My thinking was get a life. I'll stop by meetings when I get a chance. And that's when Eddie Cochran was making coffee at the noon meeting, and I walked in, and he said the very same thing to me that the guy said to me fresh out of treatment, but he wasn't aggressive. Eddie was a very gentle man. He said, "Oh, son, nice to meet you. Haven't met you before. What's going on?" I said, "Well, sir, it's very nice to meet you. It's nice to see your meeting hall. I'm going to be very busy. I'm 2 years sober. I'm fresh out of the Navy. I'm going to the university. I'm going to be working. I'm going to be very busy. I need to get a life, but I'll stop by when I get a chance." And Eddie chuckled, and then he delivered the Gettysburg Address of Alcoholics Anonymous. He said, "Son, school and work are wonderful things to do in between meetings." What he was really telling me is, son, you need to learn to live in Alcoholics Anonymous and visit the world. Please, son, do not try to hash it out there in the real world and only visit us when convenient. It won't work. And I got to tell you, by following that code for living, I've traveled the world 7 times since I've been sober, right? Because I put this thing first. I only have first thing he told me to do was put new guys in my car. My life would get better. I didn't see how that's possible. I got a hole in the floorboard. I got to push start the thing. But hell, he was 10 years sober when I was born. So I gave it a shot, and I realized this man did not lie to me. The very first night I put new guys in the car, my life got better. The new guys could push start my car. He didn't say how much better, he just said better. I can sum everything up that I've got 5 minutes here. I think this is less than a 5-minute story. I can sum everything up that has happened in Alcoholics Anonymous with this one story. 1998, I was asked to go to Nogales, Arizona, and do exactly what I'm doing right now. And before I left to go to Nogales, I called my mom and said, Mom, if you try to page me, remember pagers? Before everybody had cell phones. If you try to page me and I don't answer, please don't get worried. I'm going to Nogales. The pager might not work there. And she said, oh, Nogales, you need to get a hold of Don and Leona. They're just 20 miles up the road in Green Valley. They would love to hear from you. Maybe you could see them and have coffee. And I go, who? And she goes, oh, yeah, you haven't seen them since you were 10 years old. But Don was the best man at your father's, my wedding, and they've been lifelong friends. They'd love to hear, sure, Mom, I'll do that. So I call up Don, and I go, Don, this is Karl Morris. I'm going to be down in Nogales. Maybe we could get together for some coffee or something on Saturday while I'm there. And he goes, oh, bring your golf clubs. I know you love to golf. It's like, that's weird. I haven't seen him since I was 10, but it's a very true story. I love to golf. I'm like obsessed with it. I'm like a golf whore. I'll golf with anybody at any time for any reason. I don't even need to know you, but I'll golf with you. That's weird that he knows that. But I leave the conference on Saturday morning. I brought my golf clubs. I met him at his country club. We started to walk along. And in the first 4 holes, he is asking very specific questions about my life. He knew what school I had graduated from. He knew what degree I had. He knew I worked for General Electric. He knew I sat on the board of these recovery houses. He just knew everything about my life. And by the 4th hole, I go, Don, I am really confused. I've tried to squeeze in a couple of questions as to what you retired from and why you're down here, but you seem to already know about my life. And I go, how on earth do you know that? He goes, oh, that's just so easy. I get the Christmas letter. I'm like, damn, I got in that thing. If that's all that had happened in my life as a result of Alcoholics Anonymous, it would have been enough. But I have found a life of meaning and purpose here, and I didn't even know that was available for a guy like me. Have a good night. Thank you.